Here's a beautiful story. The tzaddik Reb Moshe Leib of Sasav, who was one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, was once visiting the town of Brod, when a wealthy local woman asked him to daven for the recovery of her seriously ill daughter. Her daughter was very sick, and she asked this tzaddik who was traveling through, please daven for my daughter. When the woman mentioned her late father's name, Rav Moshe Leib recalled that he had once known her father, a man who had a sterling reputation for being extremely generous and very charitable. In keeping with the custom to give the tzaddik a pidyon, sometimes if there's a problem, like for example, especially if someone is sick, there is a custom to give a certain amount of money to a tzaddik who'll daven for the person who's ill, and in lieu of that money, that the person should have a complete recovery. A monetary donation, the woman took an envelope full of money from her purse and placed it on the table, but the Rebbe refused to accept the money. I don't want money from you, he said to the woman. I know that you have a very beautiful silver menorah. That's what I want. I want that silver menorah. Rebbe, she said in surprise, the menorah that you describe is an heirloom that has been in my family for generations, but I don't use it anyway, and if the Rebbe wants it, I'll gladly give him the menorah. That very evening, she returned and presented the valuable menorah to Rav Moshe Leib. His attendants were shocked. Never before had the Rebbe asked for such a specific item for a petitioner. What did he want it for? In any case, he never used any menorah other than the one that was given to him by his Rebbe, the famous tzaddik Rav Shmelka of Nikolsburg. Actually, Rav Moshe Leib did not want the menorah at all. Sometime later, he called Yechiel Tzoref, who was the local silversmith of the town, and told him a story about the craftsman's grandfather. You may not know this, Yechiel, but when the time came to arrange a match for your mother, your grandfather was so poor that he couldn't find a suitable young man because he didn't have a penny to give to the dowry of his daughter. No one would lend him a penny for his daughter's dowry, since he would never be able to return the loan because he was so poor. After approaching all his friends and acquaintances, your grandfather visited a very wealthy man and begged him for a loan. I know you'll never repay me, the wealthy man said, but let's make a deal. You have a beautiful menorah, a unique work of art. Give it to me, and I'll give you 10,000 golden coins, enough and more for your daughter's dowry. When your grandfather, Rabbi Moshe Leib, told this to Yechiel, heard the demand, he was shocked. For him, the menorah was priceless. You know how that menorah came to be? Every year his Rebbe, Reb Zusha of Annapolis, the famous tzaddik Reb Zusha of Annapolis was the brother of the Noam Elimelech, distributed silver coins to his followers. Rabbi Yechiel, your grandfather, collected all those coins year after year and melted them down to create a magnificent menorah with the silver that was contained in those coins. And this was what the wealthy man wanted. He wanted that menorah that was made by those coins that were melted down. In the end, your grandfather had no choice but to accept the man's terms because he so badly wanted to get his daughter married off, that being your mother. And so he accepted the 10,000 golden coins for his beloved menorah, which he gave to the wealthy man. Rav Moshe Leib paused and closed his eyes in meditation. After a few moments, he fixed them on Yechiel and returned to the story. And when the wealthy man passed away and stood before the heavenly tribunal, you know, when people pass away, they have to have a din and cheshbon and accounting up in heaven as to how they live their lives below in this world. A commotion broke out in heaven regarding his good deed, in which he lent the money or gave the 10,000 in exchange for the menorah. True, the wealthy man had performed a huge mitzvah by giving a small fortune to your grandfather, but at the same time, he had coveted the prized possession of a poor man and caused him untold pain. You know, it says in the Torah, Lo tachmod, you're not supposed to covet something that belongs to someone else. And this could have been a sin held against them. Finally, the heavenly court reached a decision. The wealthy man's reward would be withheld, even though he did a big mitzvah by giving him the money to be able to marry off your mother, since the mitzvah was sullied by the sin of coveting someone else's possession. He was to have his reward withheld from him. At this point, Rav Moshe Leib rose, brought forth the gleaming silver menorah he had taken from the woman, and handed it to Yechiel, who was left speechless. This was the menorah owned by the silversmith's grandfather. I have arranged to return the menorah to you, his grandson. The sin is now atoned, and your grandfather's wealthy benefactor can now rest in peace, enjoying his eternal reward for the good deed that he did. The Gemara teaches us, Tanu Rabbanan, mitzvahs Chanukah ner ish ubeito mehadrin ner lechol echad ve'echad. The rabbis teach us the mitzvah of Chanukah is to have one light for a man and his entire household, and for the mahadrin, and for those who are even more careful, one light for each individual. This implies that each individual can illuminate his soul on Chanukah. During these days, everyone is equal and has equal access to the flow of holiness mentioned by the Arizal. Every one of us can partake of the holiness of the holiday, regardless of what's our stature in terms of how many mitzvahs that we've done and how righteous we are. The Arizal tells us that the light of Chanukah descends and reaches us from above. On these days of Chanukah, the elevated and exalted roots of the Jewish people are revealed equally. As it says, Banim atem la Hashem elokechem, you are all children to Hashem your God, regardless of how holy you are. a father makes no distinctions in his love for his children, and Hashem makes no distinctions in his love for all Jews. And that's important. Therefore, Chanukah is relevant to each and every Jew, even the simple and lowly. Indeed, we see that even those who are far removed from Judaism observe Chanukah today, at least to some extent, just as the Chanukah miracle was intended to elevate the Jews from the lowly depths that they had reached in the times of the Greeks. As it says in the Gemara, Yisrael, even though they sin, are still Yisrael. Regardless of whatever happens to a Jew and he sins, he never loses that moniker, he never loses that status of being a Jew. Due to their inner spark, all Jews are equal before God. The root of their souls and their special attachment to God shine with light and becomes revealed during these days of Chanukah. All are beloved, all are flawless as one person with one purpose, to do the will of our Father in heaven.